Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. In my last video I made some Warhammer the Old World terrain. I made some buildings that looked like they were on fire or had been burnt by the nasty invading Chaos Marauders under the command of Friedel. Now if you have Marauders of Chaos invading Westerland and the Empire, how did they get there? It wasn't by plane, it wasn't by train, it was generally on a boat, a long boat. And this video I'm going to be showing you how to make some more terrain, and this time a beached longboat in Westerland.
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter-Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems, and offer custom items to suit your club, your event, or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Check out the link in the video description. I'm sure, like me, when you opened your copy of Ravaging of Westerland, or you looked at pictures of it online, read the article, you came across these wonderful big army shots, the kind of thing that inspires so many of us as wargamers. And they got these fantastic ships in the background, and I don't think they're plastic kits. You never know, that would be amazing if they are. But I thought, I've got to make something like this. And I have to thank the Discord, and I think Mark Langley, who suggested this one and provided the link. It was about £35 on Amazon. I'm sure it'll be cheaper somewhere else, but it's one of those, I thought, I've got to do this. And it's about the right scale, which is fantastic. You get a big sail in it, a plasticky sail, and loads and loads of transfers as well. And the instructions are fairly straightforward. There's no GW kit, but there's so few parts that it's going to be very easy to put together for anyone who's put together a modern day GW kit. As you can see, that the actual hull of the ship is just in two halves there, and then you've got the main sort of the flooring area is one big sheet as well. So it took no time whatsoever to glue together. It glues together with plastic glue. Funnily enough, I'm using Revell plastic glue anyway, and this is a Revell kit. There's loads of other little extras on there as well, loads of shields which I don't use because it's obviously supposed to be a historical ship, but you can see how easy it just goes together there. So I glued together the main parts, stuck in the main mast, which was just one part, and then I thought about the sail because I want it beached on a beach, of course. I decided not to go with the full large sail. I wanted to make something a little bit smaller. So I did add a little bit of the rigging here, just to the top, because I thought it would look nicer when painted rather than just having that crossed bar there just floating. You do get all of this rigging there if you want to do it yourself. But instead of using that big plastic sail anyway, I'm using the cover from the water slide transfers, the decals, the decals, cut it to size and just sort of made it a bit more sort of sail shaped. And the whole idea is to have it all furled up, all rolled up anyway. Furled's probably not the right word, but you know what I mean. And that's what it looks like in situ, all glued on. A little bit scruffy, but once there's paint on it, it will do the job fine. So I started gluing in all of the little oars. It's obviously been beached. So the whole point is they've probably rowed the last 100, 200 yards in it at least, and maybe they've come in on those for a little while longer as well, so the sails weren't spotted off the coast or something. If you're doing this at home using the same kit, maybe leave these off to the end. I thought it'd be easier to paint, but it does make it a little bit harder to dry brush later on. After that, I opened up my box for my Marauders again, just all the sprues with the leftovers on there now, but what I was after is the shields, and I had plenty left over from the Marauder horse. You get a few spares, but then loads because I built a whole unit with flails. And I also used the top of a spare banner here, so I trimmed the top off the mast and added something a little bit more chaosy to the top there with a banner as well, so I thought it'd be fun to use one of the decals that comes with the kit, just to make it less historical Viking and more old world Chaos Marauder. So adding the Chaos shields, that little banner on the top was fine. And then it was a case of starting to work on the base for this. You'll see me resting it on an old hill there. At one point I was going to use it and I just couldn't make it work. So I've got this square of wood that I cut off, and I'm just smoothing off the edges at this point with my Dremel.
quick check here to make sure that it fits in place, and that's perfect. I don't want it to take up too much table space. The whole idea is this fits on the corner of a gaming table, and I'm going to use a trio of browns here through my airbrush, zenithing up, and I've already primed it black, as you can see there. If you're not an airbrush user, you could go with a nice brown rattle can and then do a lot of the same work afterwards, but I thought I'd be able to build up more sort of gentle gradients with the airbrush, allowing the black to do an awful lot of the heavy lifting in terms of providing shadow. So it's a little bit more than a zenithal, but you definitely some of the principles of doing a zenithal highlighter there, but I'm doing it in color and building up those layers and just making sure that none of the layers really are completely solid, allowing those shadows within the detail to show through, using an angle or the way I'm holding the airbrush at times to be the source of the light, to make it a little bit stronger in color and leave some of that shadow in there, because it just gives so much more depth to the miniature, even towards the end of the oars there, just making sure they're a little bit light as if the sun's reflecting off them. By this stage we're towards the top of that colour, and I'm not always going to shout out the names of the paints. You can pause the screen once I hold them up. Everything I use I do hold up to camera. They are available as a full paint list and as a picture as well of them all grouped together not long after I post this video on my Patreon. Now it's for free members, that part, so you don't actually have to pay me anything to view that paint list, but if you didn't want to keep stopping your video in order to scribble it down, which you can do, you can also go and join my Patreon even as a free member and have access to all of the painting lists and stuff as well. Obviously there's loads of really cool stuff available if you're a paid member. It might be worth checking out, but if you don't want to make a note of the paints now, do go and check out the Patreon, because there will be a handy article that pops up not long after this video goes out, just showing you all the stuff that I use. I'm going with a couple of cream or slightly off whites here, in this case Vampire Fang and Trooper White from Tooth and Coat. Just got a bit of paper here just to prevent the overspray, really, and working a little bit from the top down, just trying to lighten up the sail a little bit, make it look a little bit more sort of cream coloured. It could be grey, it could be lots of other colours as well. Like a nice big red sail would look good. I'm going for the cream colour for this, and that's the example, but you know, obviously use whatever you feel is better. But by using the paper like this and going from almost top down, yeah, it's a very subtle transition between the different colours, and you've got lots of that shadow and some of the brown showing through, and when we add some weathering later on as well, it just makes it look pretty cool. I'm using that same off-white, in this case Vampire Fang, for some dry brushing as well. So a nice big soft dry brush, a little bit on my dry palette, very little paint on the bristles at all, and I'm just going on and catching as many of the sharp edges as I can. I don't want to be smearing it all over the flat edges, so I'd rather have less paint on there. You've got the wooden struts on the boat as well. The detail isn't as strong as it might be on a Citadel miniature, so you'd have to be careful in certain areas. But I'm just going now over the top of all of that brown, picking out the sharp edge detail, because I'm going to be using some glazes on top afterwards just to tie it and tow it all back down again, but it just adds loads more vibrance to it, and really picks out the detail, and you'll see in a moment when I start adding these next layers, it's well worth it. I'm using some speed paint here. You can use contrast paints as well. You tend to find a darker reddish brown, a mid or light brown, or even a bone colour, and a green are perfect for this. And I use this method a lot, quite often just over pure zenithal, so black and then white on top, and you can do really nice wood effects. But if you thin the paints enough, and these are almost thinned 50-50 with water or speed paint medium, you can just glaze over the top now of all of that dry brushing we've just done. So it's not obliterating all of those 3 layers of brown that I've done with the airbrushing, but it's just toning down any of the dry brushing. So it's softening that dry brush, allowing that dry brush to show through where the edges are, so still showing off that detail, and just really tones all of the wood. And because I'm using those 3 different colours and I'm wet blending them in patches all over the miniature, you get these really interesting different tonal qualities that you do with wood. Wood isn't just one flat colour all over, there's lots of different changes. Maybe it's a bit damper in certain areas, maybe it's a bit of mould or green or something coming through. So we're using these colours on the boat, wet blending them together over the browns that we've airbrushed and over all that dry brushing. You just get this really simple effect, but it just looks so cool and so easy. This is Warrior Skin speed paint. Again, you can use any of the Citadel contrast paints as well, which I tend to use more of. I've recently received these from Army Painter, so I'm just playing around with them and doing lots of testing with them, and they're very good, to be honest with you. The speed paints are very good, so I'll just put that all over anything
that was likely to be made out of hides, the flags, and then some of the skins that are on the shields, and then following up afterwards with a black contrast paint, or contrast style paint, speed paint in this example, over the furs on the shields as well. And because I've dry brushed those over the top, all that detail shows through and they look fine just as they are. All of the shields have got metal on them around the edges and metal designs on the front. So it's a case now of going around and picking all of that out in your chosen fun metallics. But I'm just going to be using 2 metallic paints for this. A really dull dark one to be the base layer, and then a lighter one afterwards, just to dry brush and really pick out some of that detail, give it a little bit more life, and then I'll be washing it again afterwards with some oil paint. So the lighter dry brush is Mithril from Army Painter Speed Paint there. You can see I'm just catching the edges and the tops of the center of the design. I'm trying not to get it on any of the wood areas. Very little paint on there, just really makes it pop a little bit on the top of that mast as well when you've got that chaos banner up there. But generally just working around where the light is catching the top of that metallic and making it glint a little bit and making it look a little bit more 3D rather than a plain 2D. Adding the same decor of the serpent to the top, which matches what I'm doing for my army. And then we're on to loads and loads of blues and greens, and not just these, there's lots of contrast and speed paint as well. Trying to build up some bluey green colour to be the corner of the sea where this ship has come in, and I probably used too many colours there. I'm not going to list them all now. They will all be in that Patreon article if you want to copy exactly, but you probably only need half as many as I use. But I didn't know what I wanted to use, and I like to work quite organically, so I just kept building up in layers and playing around with it, working in the same direction most of the time there, so just to build up an idea if there are any faint lines showing that they're in ripples of the waves coming in rather than going the opposite direction. Occasionally when it comes on to the contrast paints and the inks, I do go in the other direction deliberately to maybe look like a bit of an underswell or something like that, but essentially I'm just playing around and building this up. You don't need an airbrush to do this either. You could do this with lots of paints, wet on the brush, maybe even slightly wet on the miniature itself on the board here, so you can wet blend them together. And I'm going to be covering this in resin later as well, so I just wanted something to represent different tones of water. Bluish. I didn't want to go for a grey sea, I suppose. Where Westerland is, that would almost be the North Sea if it was in the real world, which actually isn't. It's nice and blue, but I decided I wanted to make the beach look a little bit nicer maybe than the North Sea actually is. And most of the rest of this baseboard here is going to be sand and then a little bit of earth. So rather than just go directly over the black, and this is a board that I've used to sort of paint miniatures on top of all kinds of things for years, use it as a spraying board and things. It would look fine when I cover it in a moment, but it's pretty rough looking. But I just wanted to get some base colours down, so I went for a yellow first, and then just a little bit of a speed paint brown really around the edge where it's going to match and meet the table. And the whole idea is that it's going to meet a table that's very likely to be a grass mat of some kind. So I wanted the sand to progress into something that could be seen as dunes, and then maybe onto grass, and hence the 3 tones there, the blue, the yellow, and then the brown, just as a base to work from. Now I'm moving on to sand, and this is kind of real sand. It's from Muddy Poor Terrain. I was sent some to review. I'll try and remember to put a link in now, but essentially it's a mix of different coloured sands, and they do 6 different colours at the moment, and it's got some kind of filler in, so when it reacts with water it dries hard and solid. You don't actually have to use any glue to stick it down. I'm just building it up here with layers. A squirty bottle's really good, but because I was using quite a lot, I decided to sponge the water on and spread it out. You can see how I'm just building up layers of this different coloured sands, and allowing them to go hard and dry, and then wetting again and adding more and more layers, and whatever fillers in there, maybe it's some kind of grout mix, that kind of thing, like a powder grout. It just really sort of sets it quite solid, the same way as in the old days when you used to use PVA glue and sand mix. Now you don't have to buy that stuff, it's from the US. If you're outside the US it can be expensive to ship, etc. So a nice sand mix and painting will do the job just as well for you, or even not painting. If you've got the right colour sand, you might want to leave it natural. Using some AK terrains around the edges, the stuff I normally use on bases as well, just to blend in with the kind of basing I use on my miniatures, and also the table, as I was talking about a little bit earlier on. And once that was dry and the boat was stuck on, super glued on,
I've gone back in around the edges of the boat to build up more layers of the sand. So once it's drying, as I said, you can build up further layers as well. I really wanted to have an idea of some kind of ridge where the boat has been shoved up into the sand, created a bit of a ridge, and therefore the sand is displaced slightly on either side. This gives it a very, very subtle mound. Obviously, there's loads of ways I could have done this. I could have carved it out of blue foam or something to get all the shapes that way, but this just felt the quickest and the easiest way of doing it, working on that flat wood and gluing it straight on and building it up that way. Now, I like to use pigments quite a lot, and I like to brush them into detail, so into textured detail, and just blow the excess off. You don't need to seal them then. If you can make a wash out of them if you want to, but I quite like the effect. And I just wanted to bridge the gap slightly of where the sand is and where the earth is, and quite often you'll get a sort of a dustier mix where the earth and soil are changing into that sandy texture. So just brushing a little bit of this in patches and blowing off the excess. By this stage, it was adding tufts. I've got two different colours here. I've got winter and spring from my favourite range of tufts in the UK, wall painter figures. 2mm ones are the ones I've bought since painting smaller scale miniatures, and I tend to use them on all of them now. Very rarely use the higher ones. It's more realistic grass length in many ways, unless you deliberately want something that's really, really tall. Lots of little super glue dabs all over. I'm just going around the edges, putting them on as a mixture of two colours here that are slightly different shades, and the lighter ones more towards the sandy areas, as if you've got that sort of dune grass. And maybe I don't have any now, and I wouldn't have got the video out in time, but I might buy some slightly longer tufts just to make a few more dune tufts and things. I might add that later on. At this stage, we're getting quite close to the end, as you can imagine. The sand is done, the boat is pretty much done, apart from a few effects at the end. And this is where we start those. We have grease. This is one of my favourite oil washes. It's a light brown sepia-ish oil wash. I'm just adding it on all to the metals and in some of the wooden areas on the boat as well, just to add a little bit of grime inside. It really pays off once it dries. Now, I haven't sealed the boat here, so I'm being quite careful, especially when I'm using a new kind of plastic. I'm not used to these Revel kits, but it works out fine, and I'm only putting a very small amount of this ready mixed oil paint on there as well, making sure I'm using an old brush as well. Blood effect, just been playing around with the True Blood Army Painter blood effect. It feels almost identical to Blood for the Blood God from Citadel, and the way they work, even the colour. So I don't know which I'd choose, whatever was near me at the time, whatever was cheapest, almost easily available. They're very, very good. I'm just being gruesome here really. I'm painting it thinly over, adding a bit of water to thin it over the bits of hanging skin that are on some of the shields. I like the idea that maybe they're a bit fresh. Most of the shields have gone, obviously they've been carried off by warriors. A few little blood marks and things on the deck, and I add a few around the beach, around the edges as well. I like the whole idea that when they landed, maybe they were beach defenders and there's been some fighting on or in and around the boat, which I think is pretty cool. Again, it just adds something very different. We've got a lot of, apart from the strong blue, the rest are all browns and yellows and things, so it's kind of sort of one mono colour almost. It's very, very dull, so little aspects like this that draw the eye, little bits of detail, just kind of makes it a little bit more realistic and visceral. Obviously, whenever you do blood effect, don't go too far, don't go too thick. It's supposed to look like a battle, not like some sort of horror film, I suppose. I want to make the water look better than just some blue paint. I could just paint a layer of gloss varnish on. That doesn't look too bad at all. But I thought adding about 2 or 3 mils worth of UV resin would be perfect. It's quite hard to get on here. Again, I should have added those ores on at the end probably. But, however, using a rubber-ended clay shaper, you can smooth this stuff out in between the gaps, and then it settles anyway. It's quite thick, but it settles a bit by itself. And it's not until you hit it with the UV light that it really, really starts to set. And it's using kit like this UV resin, and the stuff I have is from Green Stuff World, but I know there are other companies that make them now. Just really finish off bits of terrain. It looks so cool, and it really is only just a couple of mils of this stuff, and it just dries rock solid afterwards. It's almost like a clear plastic or something. You can tap it. It's hard. It just looks brilliant, and it really takes it from looking like that's something that's just been painted to something that's really, really detailed. I'm just adding a little extra layer here along the front, and then using the UV light while I turn it into a little bit of a ripple at the end as well. It's amazing what you can do with the stuff if you kind of cure it at the same time as you're working with it. Now, this stuff is designed to make the edge of water look like sort of white frothing water,
I'm not 100% sold on it. It didn't seem to do much more than a white paint would, but a white paint would have maybe been what I went for anyway in this instance. So I'm just adding it into that sort of rough area along the edge of the water that you just saw me making. I think even a good snow effect, something like the AK standard snow, which is more of a paste rather than sprinkly stuff, that would look pretty good in this instance as well, and do a very similar job. And if I was doing it again, maybe I would do that. And once I'd finished it, I added a little bit of the clear resin over the top of it as well, just to make it look a little bit less like paint on the edge, and it sort of runs out into it a little bit as well, which makes it look a bit more like foam. And that's it. That's the terrain piece. It's it's sizable enough there. It's nearly a foot square, maybe a little bit under that, but also you could stick this in the corner of your table and it not have a huge impact in an awful lot of games, to be honest with you. I like a lot of narrative play and things anyway, so that's more what I've designed it for, and just a companion to go with some of the other terrain that I've already made, which I mentioned earlier on, and for the army. But even if you're not playing Marauders and you're an Empire player or something, this is a very cool thing to have in the corner of your table. Really adds something very, very different, and I had lots of fun doing it, and it's one of those things that's come out exactly as I pictured in my head, which doesn't always happen, but it did this time, and I think it's pretty cool. But definitely loads of fun doing it. I love working with slightly different kit, and it's weird not working with a Games Workshop kit when making something for Games Workshop, but I think this Revel kit is about the right size and does a really good job of that, and you can see that here with all of the miniatures, well, not all of them, but a selection of miniatures lined up by it as if they've just stepped off the boat there. I think it's about the right size for a small boat that might be used for actually landing on the beaches of Westerland, which is cool. So let me know what you think in the comments.
Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. This has been a really fun release. The whole raising of Westerland Arcane Journal, the new plastic miniatures have been fantastic, and I was really inspired to add to my existing Warriors of Chaos army, and I've been wanting to add the Marauders for a while, or more Marauders. I had some already, and this is just perfect finishing off. And I'm not fully painted all of my Marauders yet, mostly because the content on the channel is coming thick and fast, and I've also got a doubles event coming up at the end of January, and I'm having to prioritize a little bit, especially with Christmas, as I'm sure you will all understand. But I really wanted to make sure that I continued the theme of content for this, and there will be some more in the new year when I get back to my army and the plans I have for that of a pure Marauder themed army. I've got some lovely ideas, and I'm going to be sharing it with you, including pictures of the whole army. But until now, I wanted to add a bit more than just the Arcane Journal review, just the painting tutorial stroke review of the new miniatures, and I wanted to add some specific terrain, and that's fun. I can't always do that, but this seemed a perfect opportunity to make those burning buildings, which were out last week, and to also do something with this. And it's a fun piece to go in the corner of your table, especially if you're playing narrative games. It might not work in a competitive setting, it might get in the way a little bit. I'm sure you could use it, maybe move it out of the way if you wanted to, but I love terrain boards that look like they're full, and I've got lots of fun stuff going on, and because that fits out of the way in the corner, it's actually not going to impact the games too much. And if you wanted to, it's a perfect place for your army to start from, or something like that. Loads and loads of fun. You could obviously do loads more. You could have more ships. You could cut the ship in half and make it look like the boats are half coming on, so they take up less table space. Lots of different options, and hopefully a video like this will give you ideas how to go about doing it, whether that's a 3D printed ship, whether that's a kit like I purchased, or whether it's MDF. There are loads of options out there, and it's relatively simple to make some cool thematic terrain to go with your armies. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you have, please do drop a comment below about it. Please do give the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. If you've liked it enough and you've been following the channel enough, you really would like to support me even further to make more videos like this, then please do take a look at my Patreon. It is the very, very best way to enable me to make more videos like this. If I have enough money, I can spend more and more of my time painting these kinds of kits, working on these kinds of models, filming it and editing. It takes a very long time to do it. Probably took me 2 full days to build, paint, edit and film, and I do it out of labour of love. and I'd love to do an awful lot more of it. So it's through people like my patrons that support me that enable me to do these projects. And the more patrons I have, the bigger I can make these projects, the bigger I can make these kind of videos that you may have seen in the past, the big Mordheim table type videos that take days and days and days and weeks to film and things. I want to do more of that stuff, and if you enjoy it and you like what you've seen here, then the very best way of making sure you see more in the future is to take a look at my Patreon. So thank you very much for listening to my little sales pitch there. Do check out all the other links in the video description as well. There's a link to Gallery airbrushes you may have seen me use in the video, and there's a 10% off code. Check out the merch store link as well for Warhammer merch if you're buying Warhammer t-shirts, those kind of things. And do check out the link to dice if you want to buy some Miniature Realms dice, because that money goes directly to me to help me out. And also check out the channel sponsor, Counterattack Bases. But thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.